Being in a relationship and having ADHD is no easy task. I've had for sure my fair share of unsuccessful relationships due to my ADHD, but I've also had one successful relationship that is currently successful. So in this video, I'm going to share with you the 5 secrets to having a successful relationship with ADHD. By sharing the lessons that I learned from my past relationships that weren't successful, the mistakes I made, and how I learned from those mistakes from what I currently have as my successful relationship. So breaking this down to 5 stories and 5 secrets and lessons that I learned. So I'm going to change the names because I'm not going to give away the name of the different girlfriends I did have. So I'm going to change the names of here. So the very first story is about a girl I dated named Belle. Now this girl, she was like everything I had on my checklist. And so I thought this relationship would go really well. The problem though I had is I was not very good at communicating. Having ADHD, we're really bad at communicating. And when we would go on dates, she would have no clue when the date was or what we were doing or what was supposed to be happening. And then I was very bad at communicating as far as where we were going with our relationship. She was always wondering, what's the future lying ahead? She wanted to know, is this something serious or is this something you're just having fun with? So I was really bad at communicating that. And it came to a point where there was this very embarrassing situation where she was driving me home. Yeah, I didn't have a car at the time. I was a poor college student. And she was driving me home and I would usually just jet and run. I didn't really want to have this awkward conversation that she would always keep on bringing up. And there was a time where I was just about to leave the car and click, she locked the doors. I was like, oh great. So I was trying to open the door and it's locked. And then she says, Dallin, we need to talk. And I was like, oh, great. We gotta talk about this. So I turn around, I'm like, okay, what do you want to talk about? And she goes into details about just, not communicating very well. And also that where are we gonna go with our relationship? Is this something serious? Maybe even leading into marriage. And I was like, oh, okay, I don't want to talk about this. I just want to get out of here. And I didn't know what to say. I was stumbling over my words. I couldn't give her a really clear answer. So finally I left, and as you kind of might imagine, that relationship just crumbled. We went our separate ways eventually, and that was a problem with communicating. I wasn't very good at communicating and conveying that. So if there's one thing is people with ADHD and making a relationship work is communication. So don't worry, I'm gonna go full circle here I'm telling you my mistakes and how I learned from these mistakes. Don't worry, I'm gonna talk about that more towards the end. The second story, now we'll call this girlfriend Jane. So Jane, both her and I, we thought we were in love. We thought maybe we might get married, who knows? It was a good relationship. The problem this was before I was starting medical school. So I had to stay in Washington. We were both from Washington. She wanted to pursue something else. She wanted to go back and live in Utah and pursue some other things. So we thought, okay, maybe we can make this work out. Maybe we can do this long distance relationship. And so I helped her move to Utah, and then I left. And we tried to make this work out. But over the time, I really kind of found out that I was not willing to compromise a lot of things, and she wasn't willing to compromise on things. And it really caused a strife in our relationship, and it started falling apart because we weren't willing to compromise. And I think that is a big important thing when it comes to just relationships in general. But especially with ADHD, I feel like I have a tendency to not really want to compromise things. Like I have my goals, I have things I want to do, things I want to pursue, and I'm not willing to compromise. And that became a problem, not just in this relationship, but other relationships I had in the past. And that is something that I think we have to realize, that if we want a relationship to work, we have to compromise things. We have to kind of, have a balance here. If someone's willing to compromise, you also have to be willing to compromise. The third story, we'll say this gal's name is Carmen. Now Carmen, really pretty gal. And the problem here is that I was not willing to commit. I had a hard time committing to a lot of things, committing especially into relationships. And this girl really liked me. I liked her, but I could tell she really liked me and she really wanted me to really commit into our relationship, but I just wouldn't. In fact, we were on a dance team together, and sometimes in between breaks, I would go and get to know other girls. I know this was terrible of me, but I didn't feel like we were really quite a boyfriend and girlfriend because I didn't really want to make that commitment. I really wanted to know other girls. And I realized just looking at this in the past that this was bad of me, not committing to, because giving this relationship a chance. And because of this, because I was not willing to commit, she really liked me, but she started to go pursue another guy. And I found out later that she basically went and started dating another guy, and I missed out on that opportunity. Now, where I'm at today, I don't really quite regret it, but just looking at that time, if I would have committed then it could have been a different story. And I think that's important for people with ADHD is we have a hard time committing to people because we don't want, it might be that we might be afraid of trusting someone who's going to break our trust and we don't want to commit to them, someone who's going to hurt us and break our heart. Or we might just not have a hard time not knowing what we want in life. And that makes it also difficult for us to commit. Now, the fourth story, we'll name this gal Jessica, a girl I dated named Jessica. Now, in this relationship, it was a very toxic relationship. I would say I was more infatuated with her than she was with me, but she wanted to work because she knew I was a really good guy. I was a nice guy. I was really good to her, and she had crappy relationships before. Now, because of that, she would end up, when we would go on dates and stuff like that and be dating, she would go back to her old boyfriend. And this was a problem. And that should have been a red flag number one, right there. That should have been a red flag right there where this was not a good choice. But I would forgive her. She would come back to me and saying, you know, I'm sorry. And I would always go back. And we redated so many different times and always coming back. And it was bad on my mental health. It would cause me stress. It would cause me depression, despair, anger. I would have all the feelings because I would make the wrong choice over and over again. And this leads into my fourth mistake and lesson that you need to learn about ADHD and relationships is choice, is making the right choices. And if you're making the wrong choice, to not constantly making the wrong choice over and over again. So if you have toxic relationships with ADHD, which we tend to kind of do because we just jump to it, we're very impulsive, and going right off our emotions versus thinking kind of logically about some relationships, and you're finding that you're doing it over and over again, stop doing it. Stop making the wrong choice and going back to old relationships that are just causing you more harm than good. Which leads into my fifth story. So this girl, this is her actual name, is Lindsay. And when I actually didn't meet Lindsay in person right off, we actually found each other online. Back in the day, this was kind of taboo, but we developed our communication skills, which was really important for me having ADHD because remember, I sucked at communication. And so we would talk throughout the night, we would write each other, and so we haven't even seen each other yet. And we did this for about a month or two, I think. And when I actually got to meet Lindsay for the first time, it was on 4th of July. I never forget the day. I always tell her, you know, she was the fireworks of the show because she was stunning. When I saw her up on the hill coming down, when we met each other for the first time, I felt like we already knew each other because we developed that skill of communicating. And something that I struggled with, and having my ADHD is already developed that with her. I felt like I could be myself around her and that she wasn't judging and she accepted of who I was, which was huge for me, especially for my ADHD, of having low self-esteem in relationships because I had a lot of unsuccessful relationships that brought me confidence. And as we started, dating and continuing dating, is we both were able to compromise. We compromised for each other because she lived in Oregon, I lived in Washington. And so we would take turns driving and seeing each other. Eventually, as we were dating longer, I did go down there more often, but that is something that we were able to compromise for each other because we were both committed to the relationship. So that was the other thing, is that I was committed to her. Now, she will say, and this probably was my bad part of not communicating very well. When I asked her to be my girlfriend, I actually didn't say that. I said, hey, I called her one time and I was like, you know what? I really like you and I'm not gonna see any other girls. I don't think we should see anybody else. But I didn't really say, in her mind, I didn't ask her to be her girlfriend. So it wasn't until like a month later until we had that conversation again, until we were actually really committed to each other because she was dating other guys during that time because I didn't really convey and communicate that very well. So I still am not perfect at it. I still wasn't perfect at that time, but communication was still a very strong suit with us. And we were also now finally committed to each other. So there's 5 C's. There's communication, there is commitment, there's compromise, and the right choices, and then being compatible. And we found that we had a lot of similarities. We had a lot of the same beliefs. We had a lot of same goals. We enjoyed a lot of things. We enjoyed hiking together. We enjoyed dancing. We enjoyed a lot of things. And this was very important to me because I felt like I could be more myself and be more excited about life. Now, if you haven't guessed it already, Lindsay did become my wife. And we've been happily married for almost 7 years, and we have 2 beautiful children. But it comes down to those 5 things those 5 secrets when it comes to ADHD and relationships, to making them successful. And I had to learn from all those mistakes so that when it came time to meeting the right person, which was my wife, I had gone through those experiences. So I didn't make those same mistakes when I finally met Lindsay, my wife. I'm so grateful that I went through those. And that's something that you should look at, is look at your past relationships and what mistakes you made and trying to learn from those. So when the time does come, when you do meet that person, that significant other that you do hope to meet, is that you're prepared, in those situations, and they love you of who you are. And that's what I love about my wife, is she loves me of who I am, of all my weird quirks, of having my ADHD and, you know, sometimes being absent-minded, but she loves me of who I am, and I'm so grateful for it. But it really doesn't stop there, because honestly, I still have to treat my ADHD. It's important for treating your ADHD so that a lot of these problems that do come up, even within a marriage, is that you are not having these constant issues because you are treating your ADHD. So if you want to find out how I treat my ADHD naturally, check this video out right here, where I go over everything of how I treat my ADHD.